We got another big glut of rules for the upcoming Flesh Eater Courts today, as Warhammer Community had their pre-release battle report that they do when a new book or index or codex is coming out, and during that they showed off a ton of new and updated rules and abilities that we can look forward to. So let's jump right into it and go through a couple of the things that we had revealed. In the accompanying Warhammer Community article, they first showed us the spell that is known by the new abhorrent Gore Warden, who is what looks to be a bit of a mix of a fighter and a spellcaster. It looks like he's going to be able to do both reasonably well, but his spell is Winds of Shaiish, and this has a value of 6, and it allows him and a unit wholly within 9 inches to be picked up and put down anywhere else on the battlefield 9 inches from another enemy unit. They can't move in the following movement phase, but that does mean you can set yourself nicely for some potential turn 1 charges, especially with a few various ways that we've seen to get a boost to your charge roll, or re-rolling it with a command point. You can quite, not super reliably because you've still got to be 9 inches away, but you can quite reasonably expect to get a charge off every now and then, right at the very start of the game almost, by using this turn 1. I think in general it sounds like it is a fantastic spell for him and something like your Flayers or your Moreg Knights to get right up and at the very least get into the enemy's face and right near their deployment as soon as you possibly can. He also has the rule Royal Hunting Party, and what this does is it lets him and a unit of either Flayers or Moreg Knights to be set up circling the battlefield in the sky, and they can come in as a reserve unit, so you can just choose to deep strike him and some Flayers or Moreg Knights and cause havoc right where your enemy least expects it, or go after a far-flung objective or something and just really kind of trick your opponent as to where to expect your forces. On the more monstrous side of things, we also got a tease at the brand new Vargulf Courtier. This thing has got a whopping 5 2 damage attacks and 1 at a flat 3 damage, which can then each be buffed with the previously shown off Feeding Frenzy for an extra 2 attacks. But then they also have another rule, King's Champion, and with that, as long as he is attacking infantry with 1 or 2 wounds, he can get an extra 2 attacks to each of his weapons as well, so that is potentially 12 attacks in total, all doing either 2 or 3 damage, which to be honest is really impressive outlook from the Vargulf. And then he also has some additional durability in another rule that we see in the Victory Feast, which allows you to heal d6 wounds at the end of the combat phase if you've killed any enemy models, and then also you get to retreat at the end of the combat phase. So if you get charged by a unit which is trying to tie you up, you can then swing into them, kill a few of their infantry, heal any damage they've done to you, and then just retreat at the end of combat so that in your following turn you are free to move around them and charge your intended target instead of being held up by things like zombies or clan rats all game long. The Moreg Knights also got featured in this battle report. They get a brilliant rule in Shrieking Charge. This not only turns off Unleash Hell for a unit within 1 inch, which makes them exceptionally good into shooting armies like Lumineth or Caradron Overlords or the cities of Sigmar, but then on top of that, you roll a dice for each model within 1 inch of an enemy unit after you've charged, and on a 4+ you do d3 mortal wounds to them. So that is potentially 9 mortal wounds from a squad of 3 of these before the combat's even begun. They do look really, really good. They're kind of shock cavalry as far as I can tell. They do look reasonably tanky as well. Although we didn't get to see their actual stat line, there was a lot of talk going around from people that had watched the battle report and kind of got an idea as to what the players were saying, that they seem to have about 4 wounds and a 4-up save. So as I said, that wasn't confirmed in the battle report, but I think that is roughly what they're going to be looking at in terms of a few of their stats. And on top of that, they stack very, very well with one of the delusions we saw the other day. The +1 to run and charge rolls is brilliant on these guys. They can potentially get an 8-inch charge if you use them in conjunction with the Winds of Shaiish spell that we saw on the Gore Warden. So you can very, very reliably get into combat with them either through that method or just by yeeting them up the board and getting that +1 to your charge rolls. If there is a spell that maybe gives you the ability to run and charge, then obviously they just get exponentially better because they essentially get 2 inches to their overall movement there. but I don't know if there will be. It would be nice if there was some kind of artifact or command trait or spell that did that, but we'll have to wait and see for that, I suppose. However, on top of that, we also got a look at some of the other delusions that will be in this army book. We've seen Crusading Army and Defenders of the Realm, which gives the +1 to run and charge and also the +1 to your saving roll. But we also saw the Royal Hunt, which grants +1 to wound rolls for your units that target a monster, and also the Grand Tournament, which gives +1 to hit rolls for all of your hero units that aren't your general, and which made a charge move in that turn. Now these last two are slightly niche, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be the go-to pick very often. The other two, I think, are very, very good. I think Crusading Army or Defenders of the Realm will be two very viable picks, but their biggest competition, I think, will be in the 5th trait, which is the Feast Day. And this one is potentially insanely good. It means that when a hero has 4 noble deed points, you get that +1 attack from Feeding Frenzy instead of needing 6. And what that means basically is you can much more quickly, much more reliably hit that +1 attack threshold to get Feeding Frenzy, and crucially, you can keep it up whilst you are still returning models to your units. It's very, very strong, and honestly, I can see a lot of armies going to it as the default option and just building around it. But I do have to say, I think the +1 to run and charge and the +1 to saves are going to end up being equally viable options to go for. And what's really good about this overall mechanic is you pick it right at the very start of the game, so you know exactly what you're going up against, you know exactly what you are going to need and what is going to be good. You know, if you're up against something like Sons of Behemat, maybe the Royal Hunt will be the one you want for that +1 to wound. So I think the fact that it is so flexible is going to make this rule incredibly strong and useful to have. The final thing the article itself covered was some news on the Crypt Guard. These guys seem very, very tanky. They have a 5-up ward save to keep them safe, and they also have some really helpful defense against battle shock. Their banner allows them to halve the number of models rounding down that run away when you fail a battle shock test, which is really handy, especially if you bring a big 20 or 30 man squad of these guys. The other thing we learn about the Crypt Guard is that they are bodyguards, but unlike being able to pass wounds onto them like other armies' heroes can, these bodyguards, they actually just straight up buff the hero they're protecting. The Royal Bodyguard rule means that when a hero is wholly within 3 inches of this unit, they get +1 to their ward saves. So that means at minimum a 5-up ward because everything has got a 6-up ward base still, but possibly even a 4-up ward on some of our units like our Arch Regents. The 3-inch caveat is presumably to make it so that it's difficult, if not impossible, to fit Ushoran or a Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon next to this unit to get them up to a ridiculous ward, but still I think just for strengthening our smaller foot heroes, this is a very strong ability indeed, and I think Crypt Guard are going to be almost a must take if you have a couple of foot heroes in your list. Throughout the battle report, we also saw a few more rules teased and shown off. We saw what looks to be a command trait in Feverish Scholar. What this does is it grants your general +1 to cast, unbind and dispel, and +2 to those rolls if you have 6 noble deed points. Deranged Transformation is another spell which is available to the Flesh Eater Courts. It casts on a 6 and you choose a friendly unit within 24 inches which has a wounds characteristic of 7 or less, and that unit gets +2 inches to its movement and also +1 to wound rolls until your next hero phase. And if you cast this on a 10 or more on the roll, you get to choose 3 units to put it on instead of just 1. So that is a really nice buff. Some people are saying it's arguably a bit of a side grade because currently this spell, it gives you a movement buff based on the wounds of the unit you're giving it on. So if you had a unit that had a wounds characteristic of say 6, they would get +6 inches of movement. But I think although that's being brought back down to just a flat 2 inches, the fact you are also getting that bonus to wound is a very nice trade-off, I think, and it's going to make things like your Moreg Knights or your Flayers really quite scary in combat and also really, really, really fast. The Grim Garland is an artifact which looks to be available to the Flesh Eater Courts. This currently subtracts 2 from enemy bravery within 6 inches. That is now changing by the looks of things to be a 9-inch aura, so it's nothing huge, but it means you can now leadership bomb your opponent from a slightly safer distance, so that's nice. It's nice that even though there may not be some huge changes to certain things, they are getting at least a little bit of a boost and a little bit of, if nothing else, a quality of life increase. Elsewhere, we got a hint at one of our potential sub-factions, the Morun Kingdoms. What you get for playing these guys is you get a bonus noble deed point for each of your heroes at the end of the turn in which they are contesting an objective. So in addition to spell casting and fighting, it does seem that there are quite a few other options to generate these noble deed points. I also wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of chant that your priest can do to get you an extra one on top of that. So I do think that noble deed points are going to be relatively quick to get. I think getting up to that maximum of 6 is not going to be super difficult, which I know some people are saying makes the delusion of the feast day slightly less appealing because you can quite easily get to 6 anyway. I still think it's really strong because you can just keep 4 points to get that +1 attack and just keep healing and returning units to your squads. But in any event, I think getting to 6 noble deed points is going to be relatively easy, and it's going to make getting the 6 noble deed points to get Feeding Frenzy really quite quick to achieve. The final thing worth noting about the previews we saw today is that summoning as we currently know it appears to be gone for the Flesh Eater Court. Instead, their ability to return units in the rule Summon Loyal Subjects is kind of like the Soul Blight replacement mechanic. It allows you to spend all 6 of your noble deed points to return a unit of serfs or knights that has been destroyed at half strength to the battlefield. So instead of just straight up summoning a new unit to the board, you do have to wait until a unit gets destroyed and then return it at half strength. However, what is crucial about this in the wording is that it says the unit returns at half strength, but specifically it can be reinforced. So you can very much bring a unit of 6 flayers, have them get killed, return 3 back on for 6 noble deed points, and then in a subsequent turn use rally or muster guard on them with some more noble deed points and get them back up to 6 flayers in total. So I think this is actually really powerful, and in terms of what it provides, it gives the Flesh Eater Courts a heck of a lot of recursion in your army lists. So all in all, we got to see quite a lot today from the battle report. There are of course still a lot of unknowns. There are detailed profiles, there are weapons, there are all the other artifacts and command traits and sub-factions. The full points costs we don't know yet, although it is worth mentioning here, the battle report used the whole army box and was noted as being 745 points. So rough math hammer, I guess. 100 to 150 for the Gore Warden, 150 to 200 for the Vargulf, 200 or so for the Moreg Knights, and then for the 20 Crypt Guard, say anywhere from 110 to 140 for 10. That adds up to around about 750-ish. So I think that's probably about right. Obviously plus or minus 10 or 20 for each of the things there. But I think roughly that's probably what we can look to expect price-wise for most of these units. So I think that makes things look relatively well priced in terms of what we've seen rules-wise so far, but then also in terms of value for money, this is really a very good box in terms of what you get in it. But as always, I'd love to know what you make of this battle report and also, of course, the rules that we got shown today. Let me know all of your thoughts and theories and opinions down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.